Well, good evening. Come on, it's got to be happier than that tonight. Good evening. And thank you for coming to our town hall meeting tonight. I'm going to try to stick to this microphone and talk slowly because the acoustics in here are a little tough. They get a little bit of an echo going. This is our third town hall meeting. We've done one in the 7th and 8th. We did one the other day on the north side, and the 1st and the 2nd. And now here we're in the 5th and the 6th, and our councilwomen from those two districts. Christian Wilhauer is here from the 5th district. Christian, if you stand up and say hello. And Yolanda McCoy from the 6th district is here as well. And Councilman at Large James Spadola was here. There he is over on the... We have the police chief and the fire chief and the director of public works for questions that you might have later on. But the purpose of this gathering is to go over our budget proposal. So we'll walk you through some of the big issues there, where we are, some of the challenges that we face. It's been, frankly, one of the more difficult years, budget years that I've been involved in. And the reason is a simple one, which is that Newcastle County was doing a property reassessment over the last, year or so. How many people have seen their tentative, was originally a tentative reassessment? How many people have looked at that document, came to your house? How many people were challenged? How many people challenged the assessment they have? You don't have to put your hand up if you don't want. Mostly we challenged because it was too high. And I hope my experience with Newcastle County with Tyler Technologies, who was the contractor doing that, was a very positive one. They were very well informed. They didn't know a lot about my house, which I had to explain to them. They didn't know a lot about my neighborhood, which I had to explain to them. And it's going to be a challenging year for all property tax payers for that reason. First, understanding what your new assessment is and the effect that it's going to have on the property tax bill that will go out later this year. With the budget that we just submitted, we had to establish a rate. And so the way it works when you do a reassessment and all the values go up, so the values over the Newcastle County have gone up almost 4 times, right? So almost 400%. So as those values go up, the rate has to go down, such that in our case, I decided because people were going to get a property tax increase regardless of whether we got new revenue, that we were going to put a proposal in for no new revenue. And so with the higher assessments, much lower rates, we would get the same amount of revenue that we did last year, and we built our budget on that. Why is that important? It's important because people like myself and others are going to get a property tax increase just because the rate of the value of their home has gone up more than the average of the county. And that's fairly complicated, but if the value of your house has gone up more than basically 3.8 times, you're going to get a little bit of an increase when the bills go out. Now, our portion of the bill, our meaning the city of Wilmington, is a much smaller portion than the school districts. So the school district bill is, to give you some idea, my house on 19th Street was assessed in the old 83 assessment at $55,500. And I paid just short of $1,100 in city of Wilmington tax last year. I did the math. Originally, they came back and they said, your property, your home is worth $480,000. Well, there's nobody anywhere in my neighborhood who has a house valued at that amount. So I contested it. They moved it down considerably. In the range, it's still high, frankly, for where I live. To give you some idea, my new next door neighbor, just bought the house. We're connected. We live in a duplex. My house is a mirror image of their house, and they bought it for $265,000 a year and a half ago. So to give you an idea of how much more mine's being assessed at than it was, and I'm going to get a tax increase of about $300 to $400, whatever that math is. So do the math. Pay attention to what other homes in your neighborhood are selling for, so that next year, if your house is way overassessed, you want to challenge it if you haven't done it this year. So my first look at our budget was, we cannot ask for a property tax increase because of this situation. The other complicating factor, commercial properties across the city, so mostly downtown, those assessments are going down for lots of different reasons. Many of them have, as you know, have been converted from office buildings to residential, and so there's a lower potential for revenue, and therefore the assessments are going down. So there's a lot happening there. Pay attention to what's happening at your property. So we start with that proposition, then we go to a series of priorities, spending in our budget efficiently with a balanced budget. We have to submit a balanced budget, which we did when I gave my budget address to council. We start with that, and we say that we're not going to have any more new property tax revenue because of the situation with the reassessments. We want to invest in safer neighborhoods. We talk about that. The number one concern that I heard from people when I campaigned, we knocked on about 11,000 doors during the campaign last year. Number one issue, safety in the neighborhoods, on the block that people live in, the neighborhood that they live in, and the city wide. We knew we have some issues with our children. The city doesn't have a direct responsibility for the schools other than participating on the Wilmington Learning Collaborative, but we can provide through our parks system additional time for our young students in reading and some of the academic disciplines where they're falling a little short. So we're working on that. Jim Simmons is here, and Kevin Kelly, who've been helping that. Jim and Kevin, stand up so people can see you. Everybody knows Kevin Kelly, I know that. I learned that. Jim Simmons used to be the principal up at Mount Pleasant, and they're working with the Parks Department to develop ways that we can be more engaged with our young learners across the city. Fixing roads and addressing vacant properties. As I knock doors all across the city, the biggest issue that we have in the city is vacant properties, because if you have a vacant property on your block, it takes the whole block. If it's not well kept, it takes the whole block down. We've been spending a lot of federal and state money to convert those vacant nuisance properties into home ownership, mostly in neighborhoods across the city. So fixing roads, another one. We have the Director of Public Works here. I call her almost every day about potholes. I know you all are seeing potholes across. I've been told, in case you're wondering why we're not making progress on them yet, is because they don't start filling them for real until the asphalt plants open, which happened a week ago, recently. So we're going to start seeing some of those potholes filled up. Support for small business and workforce. We can't grow our budget and grow our city unless we grow the small business sector and make available workforce to attract people into our state, into our city. So here's the overall budget look, revenues and expenditures. The purple line is our revenues. We've been pretty solid from fiscal year 24 up through 25, which is the budget we're in, and fiscal 26 is budget we're preparing for. So you can see how it's grown. Our revenue is growing because we're getting a little bit more wage tax revenue. The property tax is pretty flat, particularly since we've had some contests with the commercial properties. But the overall budget, it's $200 million, but it's just a 4% increase from fiscal 25 last year. We're working on the fiscal 26 budget. Next up. So I talked a lot about reassessment. The last time they were assessed was back in 1983. We're currently reviewing the accuracy. Actually, Councilwoman Will Hauer has looked at a lot of properties in her district, and we're looking at ways to kind of address those issues with Newcastle County. Our tax rate will be lowered by 78% to keep the revenues neutral. And we've had significant decreases in the commercial values. We are working on a proposal for some tax relief for lower income taxpayers. And again, we encourage people to review your assessment and file an appeal with the county if necessary. These two tell you a little bit about what we have to do to keep a strong financial base. This is our wage tax and net profit taxes. It's the largest source of revenue, about 40%. And you can see we've had some growth in the last couple years. That enables us to protect property owners from experience of property tax increase, and enables us to do the kind of things that are necessary to keep our city running, to keep our streets safe, to have a fire department that responds appropriately. And you can see the property tax is a little flatter. Kind of flattens out a little bit, and it'll be flat again, obviously in 26, because of our conscious effort not to seek any more revenue there because of the reassessments that are occurring. We've been lucky, and we've had some new revenues that have been increased over in the next slide. You can see, you've heard a lot of discussion about Delaware being the corporate capital of the world, for that matter. We get a lot of revenue in the state. These are corporate filing fees. When I was governor, we raised the corporate filing fees that the county, each of the county seats, so Wilmington, Dover, and Georgetown, get from those fees. And you can see that's an increase of almost $6 million, which was a big lift for the city budget and went to the benefit, obviously, of property tax payers. So when you hear the discussion about the incorporation business in our state, it's really important to revenue for the city of Wilmington. Okay, next. In the city budget is obviously the workforce, the people who work in the various departments, police, fire, public works, parks. That fundamentally, that's the biggest part of our budget increase. Healthcare costs that have also gone up. We've seen that. Every government, every business across the state is seeing that as well. We do, like small businesses and like the state, we have a serious problem filling vacant positions. If you can't read that smaller print, it says 35 vacant positions in public works. We actually have 46 vacancies in the police department. We have 10 recruits in the academy now, right, Chief? So really it's 36 when these come back on the street, but we're still under our force there by 36 police because we're not able to get a full class there. So on the other side, on clean and safe water, I had a big decision to make here. I didn't want to increase we have a private group that recommends the increase that we have in water and sewer, and this Utility Citizens Advisory Board, and they recommended a 9% increase. And they did because we have a significant problem with our water and sewer system. It's very, very old, and we have what's called combined sewers, right? What that is, it's not really pleasant to think about, but our stormwater sewers and our sanitary sewers are connected. And so when it rains really hard over the next couple days, that stormwater is going to rush into the sanitary sewer and wash a lot of that raw sewage. People are grimacing out there. This is the reality, into the Brandywine and the Christina River. So we're under some requirement by the federal government to separate or at least reduce the stormwater flows that are in that system so that It'll still happen to a certain degree, but it doesn't happen as much. And if we're not able to do that, it will limit our ability to encourage development on the other side of the riverfront, right? We're doing riverfront east. There's a limitation on what can be done on that side based on how much of that stormwater you can get out of your sanitary sewer system. Something I just learned like several months ago. That's a really bad thing. And this fix, the overall fix, very, very expensive. So I thought it was better to reduce the number from 9% to something lower, which is a 6.5% for water and wastewater, 6% for stormwater, because of these costs that are going to really be coming at us, and because for a typical customer, it's a monthly increase of $4.66. It's still an increase, I understand that, but we've got these challenges that we've got to meet if we're going to meet the environmental standards of a combined or a separated stormwater and sewer system. Money in here for the police promotional process. It's a testing thing. Same thing with fire promotional process. And then we have some software to help with police scheduling, some turnout protective gear for the firefighters. And then we have something that's been really successful in identifying people that have committed crimes in our city, which is a license plate recognition software. We started it with money that came from the federal government, and this money will pick up because the federal grant is going away. All right. One of my biggest priorities, I know it's a big priority for members of City Council, of what we call the Neighborhood Stabilization Fund, so $2.5 million from our fund balance to really help out some of these real problems in neighborhoods across our city. Again, as I campaigned across the city, the biggest thing I heard from neighbors was different problems on their block, the vacant houses, the drug dealing that was happening in certain areas, prostitution, particularly associated with those vacant houses. And so we need to really, I think the biggest, other than the water, the sewer systems being combined and need to be addressed in the long term, I think the biggest challenge that we have as a city is to invest in our housing stock. If you look on the east side now, and you compare it to what it was like just 5 years ago, there's been an incredible amount of investment. If you look up in the Northeast, what they're doing in Reach Riverside, there's we had close to $70 million of state money in Reach Riverside, and tens of millions of dollars more of federal money. And if you haven't been up there, you need to go and see the transformation of what used to be the Riverside housing project that was a World War II era type project for servicemen and women coming back from the war. It's transformed. If you're familiar with East Lake, which is right across the street, very similar to what's been done to East Lake there. And we need to do that across the city where we can. And it's very, very expensive. I know we have folks that are here about affordable housing tonight, and it's one of the big issues we face too. But part of the issue, part of the challenge is to make sure that we convert vacant, dilapidated housing into housing that people can live in either by purchase or rent. And it's very expensive across the board. We have another thing that's very popular, and Jackie, I think, mentioned our citywide cleanup that was scheduled for this weekend. If I was a betting man, I'm not. I would bet that it's going to be canceled because of the weather coming. If you haven't seen that front, you ought to see it. It's ravaging the state of Kentucky and those states out there in the Midwest. But we did a walking tour of the 2nd District 2 weeks ago. And what people care about is trash in their neighborhoods. They care about, trees that need to be pruned. They got trees that they're pushing up the cement in the sidewalks. And the sidewalks all across the city are a big problem. And those are the irritants that people have, our neighbors have living here as they do day in and day out. So this is an investment in just that, helping with those neighborhood issues that are annoyance across our city. We also have a pretty big investment in Parks and Rec program. One of the issues that I want to bring up to see kind of your feel for it, when I was governor, we got some money from the federal money to make investments here at Hicks Anderson and some of the parks across our city, including the outdoor part here. And so I got into a big discussion with people. I wanted to put an AstroTurf field out there because I come by here, kids are out there playing, they got a flag football game going on, and I'm like, if we just put a grass field in here in a year, it'll be dust and dirt again. Why don't we put some people who know better than me, they say, well, wait a minute, if you put that kind of field in there, you got people who live in this neighborhood, they're gonna walk their dogs, the dogs are gonna do what dogs do, et cetera, and then you're gonna have to find a way to fence it off. So I throw that out as a question. Should we put we have money to do either. The question is, should we do a turf field like, if you know the field, it's right over here, and it's not nothing fancy. Structurally we'll make it better, and there is some environmental issues that have to be dealt with. But for me, the question is, should we make it like at Eden Park? And by the way, the people who say that's not a good idea to put an artificial turf field in there know of the experience of Eden Park, where they had to keep people off of the thing. So think about it. I see everybody kind of got questioning looks about it, not quite sure how they feel about it, so we can kind of take a poll later. But we've got great parks all over this city. We really do. And thanks to the Parks Director and her team, they do a great job. But they can be better. We can be better. We can do more things with our young people, and we should. They should be safe places. They should be places that are worthy of our children. And we've got some nice investments in these two districts. I think I have a slide that shows. So there you go. So Tilton Park, we've got a comfort station coming, some bid documents in progress. So that's moving along. Connell Street Park, Helen Chambers Park. I mentioned the athletic fields and improvements. We've got designs to do either or. We just got to make a decision which way we're going to go there out here. Lots of improvements to the community center, including the boxer and arena downstairs, which I've got to go see. By the way, the last time I was in here, every year when my kids were younger, we played in a basketball tournament. And it was great because there would be, I don't know, 4 or 5 different teams from all over the city. And I remember our team was pretty good. We didn't have a lot of guys though. And we made it to the championship game, but we only had 5 guys. And one of them fouled out, like late in the game. So we played the extra time with 4 players, and we lost. We're making these investments. Canby Park, a lot of really great things happening out there. Canby Park, Kosciuszko Park, and Brown Park down there back of Browntown. All right, how many people live near the reservoir? A few, quite a few. So you know better than I what you can see out your windows right now. It's really kind of amazing. I remember knocking on a guy's door who lived right across the street. He works at Al's sporting goods store. I used to see him down there all the time. And he said to me, well, what do you think about what we're doing across the street? And I said to him, what do you think about it? He said, you better not mess it up, because we love it. And it really is going to be transformative in that area for those of you who live out there. And it's been mostly driven, I think, by a group of neighbors and others. I can see people shaking their hands who had a say. There's going to be a community garden and all kinds of things. They've taken the big hill out. It's going to be pretty amazing. You can see some of the things there. Again, some other funds in our budget to help with the child and adult food program. Some increases, again, to summer and year-round employment, a program that we have. I just really believe we got great parks. Our kids need help and attention. let's use our parks to deliver those, that help to them. Have fun, learn some more. You know, we know that children, they have learning loss during the summertime. Our kids can't afford that. So we at least got to make sure that they don't go backwards, that they go forward. We know that if you're going to be successful in school, you have to be able to read proficiently, understand what you're reading. And our kids are falling short on that, so we can really make a difference there. Okay, what else? Okay, my least favorite part. So this is, folks have asked for a marijuana update. I don't know how much you know about it, but we work with members of city council to come up with an approach. What we heard from people in neighborhoods, I don't have a really big problem with it, but not my neighborhood. So we basically have a proposal that would make these dispensaries permitted in kind of these eastern, they're mostly manufacturing zones with a special, it's actually a manufacturing zone along the riverfront, and but a special permit to do something there. So it's been to committee meeting. It's coming before council soon, and it'll be up for a vote. So if you have questions about that, we can answer that too. All right, I think that's it. So now, open it for questions. Again, thank you all for coming tonight. Appreciate your engagement. Daniel, did you have your hand up?
I do, yeah. The second question is, how is the city working with Wilmington Alliance to ensure the safety and cleanliness of their park on West 7th and North West Street? So safety's probably chief. But.
Yes. So we try to work with any sort of partner organization that wants to provide cleanliness to the parks, all sort of different civic associations as well as businesses. So if someone is interested, they can always reach out to myself and my team in order to make sure that we're trying to, we're upkeeping with the park. But if there's a specific organization, please definitely reach out to Parks and Recreation. We have no issue partnering with anyone. Like Daniel said, if it's a safety concern, that is probably Chief Campos. There he is.
You talked about property reassessment, but this question is specifically asking, will the city get a third-party fact check for property reassessment?
Yeah, great question. It is something that we've been looking at. I know Councilwoman Wilhauer would say that she is a fact checker on this particular issue, and she has been doing a nice job in her area. The question is simply this, and that is it systemic across neighborhoods, geographic areas, or across the city? What do you mean by systemic? Is there a 20%, 30% higher assessment across a defined area that we can justify? And we have seen it. It tends to be a little, what I would call episodic, here, there, there. There's a big variance from the average. You would expect that most of the properties would be around the average, and that's just not the case. So we're still working on that. We're having back and forth with Newcastle County. We will quickly run out of room because we've already set our rate. That Newcastle County has to set its rate. The school districts have to set their rates as well. And I will bring to your attention that the school boards have to set that rate. They can do it in such a way that it raises 15% more revenue, 10% more revenue, which means as they roll the tax rates back, they don't roll it all the way back for a neutral, no increase in the property tax.
Just one more from the box. They ask, how will you help city employees continue to afford to live in the city in which they work?
Yeah, it's a question that we get all the time, and that's why we work on projects like the one in Southbridge right now, where we have considerable subsidy in the townhouses that we help to build there, where the Palmer School is now. So I think 20 townhouses that will sell at an affordable rate, which is still pretty high, at $200,000, a little bit more than that, but we will have invested almost, well, over $300,000 in the construction of those units, so a significant subsidy. That's the kind of the best way that we can promote home ownership and do it at an affordable level. It does come with a significant subsidy from the government, and one of the more effective ways of both addressing neighborhood stabilization and the vacants and this issue is through the work that the land bank is doing, where they acquire properties, mostly vacant properties, dilapidated properties, where the owner is not taking care of it. They have sell them to a contractor whose obligation it is to fix it up and then sell it to an approved affordable homeowner at a rate that's below market. They get some kind of guaranteed profit on it. And so people say, well, that's a huge investment in one person, one family, and it is, but it's also investment in that whole block and that whole neighborhood, because it gets rid of a vacant property that's been a nuisance for everybody else. So it's one of the more, as I think I said in my remarks, one of the more difficult issues that we are experiencing here in the city, that's being experienced across the state and across the country, is housing affordability. And those prices have gone up for renters, and they're going up for homeowners as well. So we're trying to find ways that we can subsidize the development of units and sell them below market, or at least, or in the case, again, of Woodlawn, where they're rehabbing units and then renting them at an affordable rate. But it's very expensive. We will do that, thank you. And Alex Hackett, who's a council person at large, has joined us as well. Welcome, thank you, Alex. Sir.
You asked a question about artificial turf versus natural turf. Okay, well, you're a former football player. I'm a former football player. I find that with artificial turf, it has less give than natural turf. You're more prone to ankle strains, knee strains, stuff like that, plus the dog problem. So personally, I would rather see natural turf and have it reseeded every year.
Other question? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
In fact, they went up. Now it costs almost $2,500 to $3,000 for a four-bedroom apartment, and that's not counting houses. That's not just supply and demand. That landlord changing whatever they want because no one is stopping them. Our city passed rent stabilization law, and guess what? They didn't lose housing. So when city removed rent control affordable, home disappeared. So my question, why do you keep the people who actually live here. Last and not least, can we please change our light pattern so every light doesn't change all to green?
Across the city is an important. I think your main concern, and you and I have had this conversation before, is about affordable housing. We have a little bit of a disagreement or a big disagreement about how to accomplish it. And we need at every level. We need emergency housing we have a growing homeless population. I just formed a homeless task force to try to get a better handle on managing that issue across our city, which in some neighborhoods is a real problem, as those folks use vacant houses and they squat in them and do all kinds of other things that are disruptive to the community. Similarly, in business corridors, the same kind of issue. At the same time, we know that they have important needs that need to be met, and that's what we're going to try to do to manage that. But I think we need to develop housing availability at every level, from rental to subsidized. We have tens of millions of dollars that have been flowed into our city to help with this problem over the last decade. And it's a continued problem. Would you like to join in the conversation? We've had this conversation before, in case you're wondering.
So on April 3rd, the grand opening for the Standard took place, creating about 356 luxury apartment homes at Market West. And this is great news and extremely exciting for the city's thriving and vibrant initiatives. However, most of the renters.
Can you put up the slide with the revenue numbers for wages and... I'm listening. I've heard it before, too.
Not listening. However, most of the renters who currently reside in Wilmington are not eligible and or cannot afford to live in the Standard. Keeping in mind,
Yes.
the average median income in Delaware is well below the nation's average. Contrary to Delaware's average income being well below the nation's average, Delaware has experienced some of the highest rent increases in the nation, ranking number 2 to Florida's rent hikes.
I'd like to know where you're getting your information. We're nowhere near the bottom in average wage. Happy to challenge you on that point.
Probably the same place you got that Philadelphia rent control doesn't work.
Philadelphia, New York, you name the city, doesn't work.
Philadelphia does not have rent control. Mayor, you mentioned that you believe the best way to address the rent increases for the city of Wilmington is by working with the land banks, enabling developers or contractors to buy properties, fix up the properties, and put them on the market in efforts to increase home ownership.
We have to continue to grow as a city at every income level to support the rest of the city. One of the things that has made us somewhat successful is that we've been able to get growth in wage tax. Now that would tell you that there's something more going on than what you mentioned with respect to our average wages. We, over the last several years, increased the minimum wage to $15, way above the federal level and way above some of the other states that you claim have lower average rates than we do. And so the average day, just to give you an idea of how it affects certain industries, the average child care worker with the last survey was making $11 an hour. Starting this year, they will have to make at least $15 an hour. Now that still doesn't make them a high income earner, but it does give them a boost in order to afford more in rent if they're a renter, and maybe to get that down payment assistance that they can to buy that first home. We're going to keep working on it. We, the city of Wilmington, cannot solve that problem by ourselves. In fact, most of the revenues for us to address the problem have to come from the state and from the federal government, as we've discussed before. Thank you for coming. Thank you for keeping the heat on, if you will, on this issue. It's not going to go away. It's very expensive. All right, other questions? Yes, sir.
understand. So, Mayor, so your experience at the state level, one of the things you talked about was vacant properties and blank properties. Will you try to work with the state to remove some of the housing and slum clearance statutes that exist in the Delaware Code?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but
Yeah, so Title 31, sorry, it allows for slum clearance. There's sections within the Delaware State Code that allow for slum clearance.
yeah, it's not a concept that I'm aware of or something that we're working on. Essentially, I think what the land bank approach is, I wouldn't call it slum, is vacant property removal, if you will, or redevelopment. I mean, that's essentially, again, I think the best example is if you haven't been over on the east side, I would go down there on Bennett Street, like from 8th Street to 10th or 11th Street, Kirkwood Street, and just look at the rows of houses that have been, the old ones were very dilapidated and all boarded up, frankly, last time I was.
That's something to be open to looking into if there is legislation already on the books at the state level that could help abate some of the nuisance properties here in Wilmington. Would you be willing to work with the state on that?
If it's something that's proven to work, when you use the term slum clearance, it raises my antenna a little bit.
That's literally what it is. It says it's housing slum clearance at this time.
Yeah, I prefer to refer to it as vacant housing removal and clearance. But yeah, if it's a tool we can use, we should use it. Yeah, I mean, one of the things, that's a really great question, and one of the things that we started doing, I've never heard this expression used before, but Bud Frio's here, who runs the land bank now, took me for a tour of what he called the lower hilltop. I'd never heard that term, but it's essentially just above what the old St. Paul's School went up several blocks, and from 2nd Street, or from 2nd Street south there, they've done whole blocks where they've acquired the vacant homes and then renovated them. So that type of thing on the west side, yes. Yes. Okay, we'll get on that. Yeah, let's get together afterwards and we'll identify those properties.
As a renter for 17 years, I've worked on Market Street for 20, so I've seen a lot of the change that's happening. For affordable housing, and as downtown gets more developed by Buccini and other developers, has there been any exploration into subsidizing within those units?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's a good idea, an idea that has some merit. I know years ago I visited Montgomery County, which had a program similar to that. And essentially there's a requirement that it become part of a development, right? They do some of that voluntarily. It's not a requirement of the code at the moment, but certainly something that we should take a look at. I mean, any opportunity that works to create more units for folks at different income levels, I think, is what we ought to be looking at.
Thank you.